how we are going to make our pre-primary schools more effective so that all these things happen. So these are the things which has to be taken care properly. These are not only the challenges, these are maybe a part of our way of making our education policy stronger, and we feel like that we'll be able to come up with more better solutions. Because today the keyword which is coming up is the design thinking. So the thinking is very important, design thinking. So for every solution, you have to start thinking of it. So the problem is not a problem unless you find a solution for it. And design thinking is becoming a keyword, a buzzword for this one. And let us prepare our country for progressing with more of solutions, better solutions to progress with. Thank you, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Palit sir. For giving us a strong hope that eventually everything would fall in line, everything would be good. So you talked about that we need to keep on learning. How to learn. We need to keep on evolving. You talked about that teachers need to be given more opportunities and space, to explore and to get trained. We talked about that NEP needs to be backed by those supplementary efforts, like you cited the example of bilingual languages, books in bilingual languages. You also talked about and you highlighted the reasons why vocational education have not become successful in our country. You talked about those the impact of 10 days backlist, and you also talked about that we need to carefully utilize our resources. And in fact, during our previous session, one of the very senior educator, she said that we are not able to, we have not, we are not utilizing the one big asset which all schools have, that the diverse background of parents. I'm sure if that educator would have been here, she would have spoken about the problem Monica ma'am faced. That in 2 years she could not find a right person. If we can engage our parents, I'm sure parents have that huge different diverse background. So they are the huge asset. If we can utilize their things, but again, like a lot of you also said that we need to communicate. We need to engage parents proactively. So thank you, Palit sir, for highlighting these important areas. Thank you. We'll come back to you with questions. Now, I would request Neha Kasturia ji. Neha ji, if we can have your ideas. You represent that higher education, part of education.
Yeah,
So, a
thanks
lot of
for
you also
having me
talked
on
about
this platform with many educators with lots of experience in the field of school teaching, and I'd like to share a presentation. So just give me a minute.
Yes, ma'am. You can present. The time
Yeah.
limit is 8 to 10 minutes.
Yes, sure. Yes, I hope you can see the screen.
Not yet.
All right.
Yes, we can see your screen, ma'am.
Right. All right. So, and this is something which everyone is familiar with here, National Education Policy, which has come in 2020 after a gap of 34 years. The emphasis here is on quality education, unlike previously, which was on access and equity. Now, when we talk of quality education, what do we understand as a teacher or as a student? It's basically to make the learners economically productive, to be able to have sustainable livelihood, and to be able to positively contribute to the society and the nation. Now, with this, objective, the NEP has designed a vision and framework for school education. We have heard the views of many, principals and teachers and the higher education. Now, when we talk of higher education, the proposals of the NEP we are all familiar with. There are multiple entry and exit options when we talk of undergraduate studies. So, with this, what kind of pedagogy should faculty in colleges and universities adopt to make this NEP proposals a reality, and such that this higher education which we are giving is in sync with the NEP? So what I believe is that we need, as teachers, we need to be creative. and combine that with the knowledge that we have. How to go about it? We firstly need a multidisciplinary learning approach. Secondly, we need to give emphasis on experimental learning. And thirdly, we need to have an industry-focused pedagogy. Now, a multidisciplinary learning approach, how does this help? This helps in developing problem solving and critical thinking skills. I'll be talking about this, which is more on my experience which I've had teaching college students. At SRM, we are having an engineering department which is offering computer science and engineering, electrical, mechanical, civil. And this is, in the first year of their BTech degree, we offer a compulsory interdisciplinary course called Biology for Engineers. Now, the course curriculum that I have designed for it is, it helps to suitably expose the engineering undergraduates. They are of non-medical background to the basics of biology. Now, why do we need to do this? We need to do this so that these future engineers, they are able to seek inspiration from various biological processes and design complex machines. And very importantly, consider a biological problem and make contributions in the field of healthcare. I'll just quickly discuss how we can in the past both these objectives have been fulfilled. So this is I'm presently teaching. There are more than 100 students which are being taught biology for engineers. I'm taking their classes. So when I go about teaching them, this is the approach that I have. I try to tell them why, as engineers, they should study biology. So, we give them case studies. So this is a Shinkansen, this is a Japanese high-speed bullet train. And the design of this has been inspired by nature. It's the kingfisher's beak, which has given this machine its design. Because what the scientist, when he observed nature closely, what he observed was that this kingfisher, it can very silently with high speed swoop into a water, catch its fish. And this design was required for this fast bullet train because when it used to pass through residential areas, there used to be a sonic boom.
We are not able to your screen is frozen to all of us.
Okay. Now is it visible?
No, your screen is visible, but we are not we are not able to see your different.
The
screens,
slides are
different
not
slides.
changing. The slides are now. It's okay.
Now it's working. Now it's working.
Okay. So from when you were not able to see? Now is it visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
Yeah. So what I was just showing in my slides that what exactly do faculties in colleges and universities need to do to make these NEP proposals a reality, and how to have the higher education in sync with the NEP. So we need to combine creativity with knowledge. And one aspect is having a multidisciplinary learning approach, experimental learning, and an industry-focused pedagogy. I'll just be highlighting the first one today. So what I was talking of is at SRM University, we are having these various engineering courses, and we offer a compulsory interdisciplinary course of biology for engineers. Now, this course, we try and basically expose the engineering students to basics of biology. And the reason for it is that they can consider a biological problem and make contributions in healthcare, design complex machines seeking inspiration from nature, which is, coined, there's a term coined for it called biomimicry. Now, this is one example. The bullet train, when it used to pass through residential areas, there used to be a sonic boom. And to overcome this problem, the inspiration was the kingfisher's beak. Its design is such that it can silently swoop in to a pond, catch its fish, and the same has been done for this bullet train. Now, all of us know about it, the camera, inspired by the human eye. Then the airplanes, light, fuel-efficient aircrafts, inspired by the flight of the bird. And this is a very interesting example that I've given to my students, the Velcro. and its design has been inspired by the burdock plant fruit. It sticks, it gets stuck to the hair of, the dog, or even to our cloth fibers, and this is the inspiration for the design of the Velcro. So these are all examples of biomimicry. And another very important aspect is, how scientists, engineers, as well as doctors, how they come together to develop a prosthetic which can convert optical images to codes and later to electrical signals. Now, this prosthetic is being placed at the retina, and it is connected to the cells that transmit signal to the brain. Now, this retinal prosthetic has been approved by the US FDA and is being used for blind people who are suffering from retinal diseases. So, all these examples, what they help to, what do they convey to the students? That it's just not studying physics, chemistry. It is that a knowledge of biology will help, translate the knowledge, the concept, the skill into various engineering, the practical knowledge of engineering, which will help us come up with instruments and products which can, yes, definitely help human beings. And another approach that I have taken with my students is to give them analogies. Say, for example, when we are to tell them about the living cell, how to go about telling an engineering student about a living cell. If we give them analogies with the computer, so an analogy which I have taken here is the hard disk drive of the computer. It is similar to the DNA in the cell. The information in the computer is stored in the hard disk drive in bytes, and same way, all the information in the cell, how the cell has to function, it is stored in the DNA, in the codons. So this is how, what I've seen in my experience, that students have developed, engineering students with non-medical background, they have developed an interest in biology. And I hope by the time they complete their engineering and when they go further ahead, they are able to come up with lot many innovative solutions. And I believe that, this kind of analogy-based teaching, they get an idea of how DNA can be the data storage of the future. And these are things which will help our society. And another thing which I would like to tell about my university in Haryana, it has partnered with Siemens to have a Siemens Center of Excellence. It is within the campus, and here we allow students from engineering and biotechnology and basic science background to innovate in very high-tech laboratories. And Siemens is also giving training to the faculty here so that they get trained in the latest techniques as part of various FDPs. And yes, definitely, we are here discussing about education because we all somewhere believe it is the most powerful weapon which can change the world. Okay, so thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Neha, for sharing. And this is very, I would say, very unique to hear that, why engineering student must study biology. I believe after reading your, slides, post NEP implementation, many students would choose the combination of, biology, along with other subjects for engineering. So thank you for sharing these ideas.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll come back to you with questions. And now I would request Jaswinder sir, your ideas, your thoughts.
Thank you, Rajulji. And can I request? Yes, Soumya, thank you so much. So most of the panelists before me have touched upon teachers and teacher training, very rightly said. But let's understand what teachers need to know. Who is exactly a teacher? A teacher is a person who lets the student know that I know as much as you know, let's learn together. If that is understood properly, and this is, who said that? This was said by Chanakya, the biggest politician of our time, or the biggest teacher of our time. So what we need to understand is that as teachers, we need not know everything. Okay, we've been talking about teacher training. That is important. But as teachers, we need not know anything, everything, because whatever they may do, they will never be able to cope up with the speed of the new learner. Today's child is smarter and faster. So what is it that the teacher needs to know? The teacher need not know everything, but the teacher needs to know what to find where. So the most important training that we need to give to our teachers is to know how to look for whatever they want and where to look for it. Okay, you understand, earlier days, counting on fingertips was very important. Now nobody does that, but you should know how to use a calculator. So what I say is, if we are talking about teacher training, Pratima ma'am, you did focus a lot on teacher training. So I would say that if we, because it is a mammoth task, even the earlier gentleman said, how will we be able to teach them so much? We don't have to teach them all that. We have to teach them how to use tools which will help them learn. If you're asking students that stop, we are not going to teach you, we're going to teach you how to learn, that's what is important. So what we need to do is to give them the right kind of tools and allow them to explore. See, the way during this pandemic, they had their mobile phones and they did not have anybody to teach them. Maybe they had their kids to teach them, but they did a beautiful job. Whatever they did with their mobile phones. Okay, so they were able to deliver. So my important point is, when we are talking about teacher training, it should start with making them digitally trained. Right? Making them digitally trained. That doesn't mean that we need to teach them how to code. No, we need to teach them how to use tools. And that's it. There is a section of the society who's going to do coding. That is going to be 1%. There's going to be 90% of the society which is going to use those tools to get their work done. So that's important. That doesn't mean that coding is not good. Coding set up at early age is good because it builds up your logic. It allows you to think. And when we are talking about HOTS or when we are talking about critical thinking, that's what we want. So a child may or may not become a coder, but by learning coding, he becomes logical, and being logical is the most important thing. Okay, coming on to the other part is that how do we make these teachers teach our students how to think, how to do research? Everybody suddenly started talking about research. Research is no big thing. If we convert our classrooms into flipped classrooms, they are research-based classrooms. I always give this example. Normally what I would do if I would teach, say, a topic on, say, volcanoes. So I'll say, okay, today I'm going to talk about volcanoes and I will vomit whatever I know. But that is not what happens. What we need to tell the students, tomorrow I'm going to talk about volcanoes. I want each and every student to get me 10 lines on volcanoes. What is the obvious thing that the kids are going to do? They're going to go home, sit on the computer, Google out things. But unfortunately, they will not be able to get 10 lines. They will not find 10 lines. They will find 10,000 lines. Now the beauty lies is, out of those 10,000 lines, which 10 lines does he work out? So he does his research of finding what is more relevant to my age level, or what is it that I want to tell. And so what he does, he goes through a whole lot of stuff to get in those 10 lines. And then when they go to the classroom, they have a peer group discussion. That is experiential learning here, where you actually sit with your peer group and put up your points and show them what you experience while getting all that information. And what they do is internally they discuss their things. So in a class of 30 people, you've got 10 into 30, 300 lines. And again, they bring in 10 more lines. That is what is research. Research doesn't mean that to go and do PhD and find a new element or a component or a technology. No. Research is to find out what you want from whatever you have. So this, if we bring in the element of flip classrooms, a lot of our work will be taken care of, and teachers here will become facilitators, as earlier the panelists have talked about. That teachers no longer need to be ones disseminating information. They're the ones who are facilitating the movement of information and what is correct and what is not. So if that is taken up, a whole lot of a problem can be taken care of, because we've got just one more year to teach, as Pratima ma'am said, 94 lakh teachers. Did we even think how can we do it? The other part is, we will have to break it down into smaller block levels and then do training. And training has to be train the trainers. You can't have a set of trainers doing training to everybody. You need to go this way. If you remember long back, there was a program run by Intel, Teach to the Future, right? What did they do? They trained 100 teachers who trained 100 into 100 teachers who trained 100 into 100 into 100 teachers. And that is how the work was done. We can achieve that provided that up top-down approach is picked up. And if we work on train the trainers. And that is how I think we can get into it. Otherwise, there's no way that we can go and train everybody, because though we will have technology can be used, but pedagogy has to be delivered and shown. So that is what I think will work onto that. Coming back to my area of interest, okay, nobody except Palit sir talked about language. So let me bring in a little more light of what sir talked about it. We are talking about delivering learning in the local or the mother tongue during the early foundation years. So we are saying instead of English, let's have that local language. Great idea. Excellent idea. Because you know what happens is when we were trying to acquire English, the other subjects were already taught in English. What you have not acquired, how can you understand that in that language? So it is fantastic that the core subjects, mark my words, the core subjects are taught in the mother tongue. And you always have other languages, they can be taken up. So there is not going to be any problem. Let math and science, numeracy and environment science, let that be understood by students in their own mother tongue. Because before they come to school, they already know that language. And when they go back home, they can discuss with their parents, because learning happens not when you listen. Learning happens when you listen and then you discuss. So kids have a habit of asking questions. Right? If the child has not understood anything in English, how the hell is he going to ask questions? So beautiful thing done, a very strong step. And I think this is going to be the game changer. Okay, now let's understand one more thing. That doesn't mean that we are going to do away with English. Okay, there is a 3-language structure. We're talking about the local language, we're talking about a foreign language, and we're talking about a classical language. So when we talk about local language, that can be the mother tongue or the language of that area. Okay. Second, foreign language can be English. And the third is they can either take up Hindi or they can take up a classical language, which is either Tamil or Sanskrit. I don't know whether other languages are coming up. So these are beautifully things done. Okay. Now a lot of people say, why Sanskrit? Okay. Let me tell you, our company became the first company in the world to create a lab for Sanskrit teaching and learning. While we were developing that, I don't understand Sanskrit. I nearly failed when I had Sanskrit in my 8th and 9th standard. But when we were developing this software, I realized that it is the most logical language in the world. How can a language be logical? Each spelling of a word, there's a reason and a formula why the other letter after the first letter is this or that. So they are beautifully designed. And if our students acquire Sanskrit at an early age, again, they think logically, and they will do exceptionally well in computing or coding. That's an important thing. One more thing I would like to put up. Why should we encourage multilingual learning? Or why should we encourage our students to acquire more languages? There's a research which says, first of all, there's a point, it says that up till the age of 8, a child can acquire up to 5 languages without any problem. But the second thing is, if a child uses 3 or more languages, the brain works better. Imagine one sentence you construct with 3 different languages inputs, with 3 different forms of grammar, still make meaning out of it. That is logic. And that is something which will work exceptionally well. So coming on to this language part, good that we have mother tongue, but understand that we should not do, or we should put up the, give the right importance to English also. There's another point in NEP. Nowhere does it say that you have to teach in the local language. You can teach in the local language. So if a school chooses to teach in English, it is not going to be a problem thing. Okay. But understand, for the interest or in the interest of the child, we should see to it that the kids are actually taught in their mother tongue. Now, there was a question by earlier panelists is, how will we get teachers to teach in these local languages? It is simple. If you are living in a certain area, you know that local language. Your explanation has to be there. So if you're surviving in that area, with that language, you can always explain in that language. There was another point which said, how will we get books in multilingual formats? See, the center is going to give them the books in English and Hindi. Each state will have the responsibility of having them translated and developed in that local language. So that becomes the state subject. And let me tell you, we are not going to have A boards, B board and C board. It's going to be one single national board, the way it is in the other countries. So they will all have to follow the same structure. And that is why Parakh comes into place, because everybody is going to be tested by one national testing agency. So if there's one testing agency, there has to be one board. That's one thing. There was another point about curriculum, about telling that why don't we empower our teachers? I'm going to come on to that point, which Pratima ma'am had earlier taken up, that, and a lot of other panelists have taken up about, the teachers and all. That's my favorite subject. I'm going to come up with it last. But one important thing is, instead of setting up syllabus and binding that you can do this, you can teach this, you cannot teach that, what we should have is can do statements instead of what to do. That means if a child can do this, he has excelled or he has not excelled. Rather telling you teach him A to B or A to Z. No, let's tell them that if the child has come to this age in these subjects, this is what he should be able to do, and let the teacher decide how he or she wants to take the child to that level. That will interest the teacher, and the teacher will be able to use other things other ways of teaching, and that is out of the box thinking and teaching in the open environment rather than just closed doors, right? Teaching what a publisher has given, like sir said, that people are coming out with books which say NEP compliant. There's nothing like NEP. There's NCF 21 which is compliant. It can't be NEP. Policies don't say what to teach. It says what to do. So NCF is going to bring in that. So what I say is, I would urge if Schoolology Solutions can take it to the higher authorities, that also come up with something which is known as can-do statements, because internationally for languages, when people come from different countries and if they have to test them at the same parameters, they are saying that if a child can do this, this is the level. If a child can do this, this is his level. So if we bring in can-do statements for mathematics, for science, for social studies, for languages, it will be beautiful. And whatever language you teach, doesn't matter. There was another question, how will we assess them? In so many languages, you don't have to worry. If we say this is what the child should be able to do, whichever language he does is okay. Okay, and in English he should do this, in a local language he should do this, in a classical language he should do this. So if we get into those broad ways of thinking, I'm sure NEP can be taken up and understood pretty well. Okay, so coming on to this point, all this can be done if we truly take help of technology. We can reach to the farthest end. We can have multiple languages books available, click of a button. And what I would urge to the government is that the way you have a RailTel, are you aware about RailTel? There's a telecom or there's an internet network of the railway systems. Why can't we have EduTel, which is internet for education? That means it is totally controlled of what those negative things can't be accessed by the child, and each and every child should get free access. And what I say, instead of subsidizing books, give them tablets, give them computers, because that will equip them for the next 3 years, 4 years. And the amount of money that you spend in subsidizing books, why don't you get into this? And things will flow to the end. God forbid, if another pandemic comes, are we ready? If internet and tablets are there, yes, we are ready. So this is what I would want to put up and have as a giveaway during this, that if we really, really want NEP to succeed, there are a lot of basic things that we need to do, and then automatically the other things can be achieved if we look at these certain points. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Jaswinder sir, for suggesting these important parts. You gave us a solution, like technology is the key. We need to embrace the technology, and it has potential to find all the solutions. Thank you, sir. Now I'll request our last key speaker for this very special session, Soumya Srivastava, And during the talk, in fact, two key speakers have already shared that they are very excited to hear your ideas on vocational. Soumya, over to you.
Thank you so much. So before I begin with my presentation, first of all, I would like to say that everybody who is looking forward to this, it really makes me happy to know that, people like y'all, educators, principals, and people at high level are excited to know about, music and art being integrated into the mainstream education. Because being an artist myself, I know when I was in school, I would be really happy if this was integrated back then. But now that it's happening for the further generation, I'm really happy to know that the kids are in right hands. So having said that, I'll just start with my thing. So I'm going to talk about integration of vocational courses. So the thing is, with music and arts, it ensures that every child can experience this as a part of their day-to-day learning, which is already a thing in the other countries, but not really done in India. So it's going to really ensure that people learn this on a day-to-day basis, and not just as a hobby. I mean, of course people can do it as a hobby, but it also gives a path to all the other kids who would want to pursue it as a career going forward, and they'll have more options to choose career rather than the usual of math, science, etc. So let me allow me to share a presentation, and I'd like to just share with you guys what we at FSM, at Furtado School of Music, have been doing, because we have been training people in music, and not just teaching them about instruments or so. We have been inculcating this into the school education. So let me just share that. Give me a moment. Do tell me if you guys are able to see my slide.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, and is it changing?
Yes, it is changing.
All right, great. So just a brief introduction about what we are. So Furtado's was established back in 1865, and it has always been a leader in the field of musical instruments. Not just music instruments, but also accessories, print media, digital equipment. We also import instruments, etc. However, Furtado School of Music was founded back in July 2011 with a vision to make quality music education accessible not just to children, but basically people of all age groups, and making the whole entire learning process fun-filled, joyous, and more memorable. So we've been tied up with over 145 schools, 15 plus centers all across India, and so far we've touched, I can say, 75,000 plus, not just children, students in general. And we have a couple of programs in schools. So as I was mentioning earlier, that we are tied up with schools. So a couple of things that the other panelists have mentioned here, with where will we find teachers who will know. So what we do here is we have industry musicians who also share the same love and joy for music, and they want the coming generation to learn it the right way. So what we also do here is we train teachers on how to teach in schools, and at the same time we invest in all the music instruments, because I also remember one of the panelists mentioning that will the students be able to afford if they go for music courses or something of that sort, will they be able to afford? Of course, instruments are costly, so we do give them instruments. We give them the whole infrastructure of what the music room should look like. It should not just be like a normal classroom. There have to be certain things in a music room which should look different than a normal classroom. So we do that, and apart from that, we've also been deploying teachers into the schools, our own teachers who are industry trained musicians, and they've known music long enough to go and train the students further accordingly. As I mentioned, we have been into 145 plus schools, touching 75,000 plus students. These are a couple of schools that we've been associated with, some renowned names here like JBCN International, Nahar, CNS, etc. Now, that's about the learning part. But what happens once you're done with the learning? I mean, it's not just about exams, right? There's with stuff like music and art, it's after all, it's performing arts. So what we've also done, apart from training students, we also give them a platform to go and actually present themselves or showcase themselves out there into the actual world, compete and stuff. So these are a few FSM curated events that we do, like piano concert, cadence, bandit. We also have school recitals, etc. So basically what happens here, like say for example bandit, it's an inter-school music competition, which is the largest in music inter-school competition. Now what happened, for so many years we had been doing it offline. Since the pandemic we actually got it online. We were not sure how the response would be, but trust me, the response was crazy, because we actually saw people creating bands and competing online. So students platform to showcase. So that's exactly what we're teaching them, and we're giving them a platform to come and test out their knowledge. These kids go out there tomorrow into the actual world and want to become musicians. They already have some experience from the ground. Apart from that, we are also in tie up with stuff like Berkeley College of Music and NMIMS School of Performing Arts. So it's not just us that students learn from; they also get. And since a lot of people mentioned here that the future to education is digital, that is true. So since all of us were hit in the pandemic, we had to move online. We had to adapt to the whole thing. So did we. So since the lockdown, we moved all of our classes, including school classes, workshops, normal class, everything was moved online, and we received a tremendous positive response from not just students but their parents, including the ones who were not very tech savvy, and people actually adapted to the whole online learning phase, and people are willing to continue. And it was not just schools and colleges. We were also approached by corporates like HDFC, HSBC, etc., where we've held these classes for corporates. So it's not just students, of course, since we're talking about the education policy, it is students, but in general, music is reaching out there. And something that Jaswinder sir said very it's very important about language, and I believe that language is music is a universal language. It's okay if you don't know, say for example, you don't know Hindi, but you really like vocals, you're a singer. It's okay if you don't know Hindi, you can still learn Carnatic vocals. That's the beautiful part about knowing languages or music as a language. um, we also did a couple of summer workshops apart from our normal learning or normal curriculum. We included summer workshops in which it was not just about music, but it was also about adding a couple of other stuff, but not just learning. Like we added body percussion, we added art and craft. So everything that a child needs to know from a younger age, and can actually implement going forward. So it'll be say for example, this also starts happening in schools on a daily basis. A kid's creative mind is completely open. It's not they're not just learning algorithms and maths and science in school. They're also learning these things, which is going to help them further. It's going to open both the sides of their brain going forward. So we have these two major events that we've been doing. One is Bandit. I already told you all about Bandit. Second is Cadence. Again, it's a band competition in which we were doing it just for our in-house FSM students. But Bandit was something that we, believe that let's not just limit it to us. Let's do it as a platform to every other budding musician out there who has learned music and just wants a platform to come and showcase themselves. Having said that, I would just like to end with a very powerful message that says here that music is a powerful message, one that inspires all to pursue their dreams and be an anchor on days when we need more support. And FSM, in its small way, just seeks to make this a reality.
Thank you, Soumya, for sharing like why and how music connects the entire world, without any language with all the language differences. So thank you all. With this, we come to the last part of the session, the question part. We have received many questions, and I'll be presenting these questions to you all for your perspective and comments. And before I'll start presenting questions, I'll just take a minute in explaining what exactly we have been doing at School Lalaji. I'll share my screen here for a minute, and then we'll take questions. Some of you are already aware with School Lalaji Solutions. We are India's largest one-stop solution platform for educational institutions. We are present in 42 cities, working with somewhere around 4,500 institutions. We help educational institutions in 3 ways. We help them in buying the right thing from right people at right price. We also help them in selling their old stuff, like their old buses, generators, their furniture, to other institutions. We also help institutions in raising money, that may be in terms of finance or refinancing or loans or in some other way. Why there is a need for a platform like School Lalaji Solutions? You already have a list of old suppliers. Your team is expert. You believe that you are getting good discount. So why you need a platform like School Lalaji to find a right partner for you? In India, it has for primarily 2 reasons. In India today, we have 10,000 plus companies working in education ecosystem. So it's very difficult for both sides. Very difficult for school leaders to reach out to them and to find right companies to understand their product and in good detail. And at the same time, it's very difficult for those companies to reach out to school leaders. A lot of companies get die in 2 years or less than that because they did not get the I would say a right number of people whom they could have demonstrate their product and services. So it's a very challenging scenario. And here we come into picture. We understand your school, we understand your taste, we understand your budgetary limitation, and then we also have experts, category experts, who understand that particular category detail. They are able to differentiate between different products. So on that basis, we give right people the right. We have negotiate with them. We are offer support or smart classroom procurement, uniform insurance, diesel, solar plant installation, language lab, security solutions, such as equipment, music classrooms, healthcare, robotics, STEM labs, career stationery, digital marketing, IT solutions, education, learning, and we take the guarantee that we'll save at least 5 to 7%. So if you spent 100 rupees last year, so we'll get it done at 95 rupees this year. Just an example, we save 2 crore 40 lakh rupees for different schools in one category only, that's bus insurance. These are some major highlights: 8 megawatt plus solar installation, 3,000 bus insurance, 400 plus classrooms, 2,000 plus cameras, 50 plus training programs, old buses, uniform. And by the end of 2021, we aim to reach out to 10,000 institutions. Your support, your guidance, your blessings. In my talk here, I would just, Pratima ma'am, if I may present the first question to you.
Sure. Please.
So, ma'am, this question has come from Ms. Richa Dikshit. Richa ji is a PGT English with the Delhi Public School, Bareilly. The question says, she would like to know the changes that education system is going to have, evaluation system or changes in the board pattern. I would request Pratima ma'am, if you can highlight 2 or 3 key changes, or how do you visualize our education system, let's say 15 years from now?
Okay. Well, the question by itself is very optimistic in nature. Anyone who questions what are the changes is obviously looking forward to the changes, and it's based on the basic premise that you will be able to see a change. But 15 years from now, basically, what I envisage as a radical change is that we will have self-directed learning. We will have students who learn not for the sake of passing examinations and achieving 95% or 93% or 98%, but who will want to peel the onion where the concept and the knowledge is concerned, and who will then be able to extrapolate the acquired knowledge towards various dimensions of day-to-day life. So education will be for innovation. Education will be garnering the individual's expertise in the direction of researching more and thereby coming up for solutions for humanity. That is what I would want to see And I look forward, whenever you design something as dynamic as the new education policy, that is the end that you are working towards. I first of all would want to, celebrate the fact that the importance of learning vis-a-vis the importance of achieving marks and grades. This equation has to be coming into the right kind of a balance. And if I were to look forward to a change 15 years from now, I would look forward to these. Also, I would look forward to the end of this hyper hysteria concerning a good child, a bad child in terms of his or her definition by the report card. Let us talk about the able person. Let us talk about an individual and his or her specific areas of excellence and expertise, rather than talking about this is a brilliant child in my class, this is a first position holder in my class. And let us talk about how much the child can apply the learned concept and define his or her own area of growth and potential. So to all my English teachers, I am not looking forward to more people designing algorithms in English and understanding English language and then using it to test people's abilities. Rather, I would like to tell my teachers of languages or English, let us facilitating better communication, for facilitating meaningful communication across diversities of the globe. That is what the new age learner would want to do if he uses language as a tool and if language is taught to him properly in the right spirit within the classroom. These are the changes that I wish to look forward to 15 years from now, and I can't wait to begin, honestly. It's high time.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. We all agree with you, Pratima ma'am. I'll come back to you. Now I would request Ved sir, if I may present this one to you. Sir, this question has come from Ms. Navneet Singh. Navneet ji is a PGT psychology with Sunbeam School, Mughal Sarai. Question says, regarding the value-based education and students counseling, how much hope you find with NEP, and if you find any new curriculum and guidelines regarding this in NEP.
See, even good afternoon, and in fact, good evening, everyone, once again. The topics and in fact, question itself, as it is rightly said, in the beginning of NEP, when we started planning, and Jaswinder ji rightly said, this NEP basically is not going to change life of anyone's. This is going to change the thought process and approach towards the children. So psychology are basically the counseling part of the children is going to make a big change in the life of young minds, I would say. And in today's time, when we are talking on NEP, and when everyone is thinking that NEP means this is 3-word, NEP is going to have like everything is coming. I believe sometimes afterward we'll receive one vaccine, having an EP kind of vaccine also, I believe. So there is nothing. NCF basically, as it is said by Jaswinder ji, I was going through his complete discussion. So I would only say one thing, that we will remain as a teacher, will remain as a counselor, will remain as useful. If in child's mind, I would say that we are one client for the parents, that we are serving to the society in different way. But yes, one thing where I wish that every teacher must understand that you are the key person. And if a school has 70 teachers, so all 70 are now going to play a major role. So I would only share a thought that a chain is as strong as its weakest link. So that is the quote which I would say today. Even now, music teacher, as it is rightly said before this, dance teacher, English teacher, English is a kind of transportation, mode of transportation, I would say. It's every subject is going to be transported by a language. Maybe till class 5, we have the liberty of having own languages. But ultimately, we are coming to one common language. Basically, we are considered in the society being in English medium. But even every part of students' life is going to be touched upon In the same way, the way you are taking up, there is no change in dealing with the children, dealing with the way you are taking up your classes. Only one mindset have to be there, that wherever you are required, start approaching the way it is expected to be. Otherwise, we are same. There is no big change in this regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ved sir, for that. I'll come back to you. Now, I would request, Monica ma'am had to leave. Actually, her son was hospitalized and she was taking the session from hospital only. So, and one way it's kind of inspirational that, she did not, she just told us at the end of the session. So I would request A.K. Sharma sir, sir, if I may present this one to you. The question says, it has come from Miss Oishi Dawn. She's a teacher with the Sunbeam English School, Bhagwanpur. The question says, how should be the offline and online activities sync to get the best output?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sir, how do you see the offline and online activity post post this pandemic thing? How do you think? What do you propose to use them better together?
Yes, it's really a good question. Especially after the pandemic, like we have been doing teaching. Now, the way we were conducting teaching, offline teaching, and the time that was proportional to it, now it was reduced to an extent, because considering other factors like how much time a student can be exposed to a phone or a laptop, on the screen time, you can say. So we need to think about it, that how much time really we need from a time from a student in a school, and how much time we can now, how can we teach the student when the student is at home? Like earlier, some students were used to, when they were absent, they were not in the school, due to some medical emergencies or certain other things, they used to get ignored. If they cannot come to school, we cannot approach them, or we were not there for them. But as I have seen with my teachers, like in the past, almost last 10 to 11 months, my teachers have been giving some extra attention to the students, those who could not attend the classes during the school time, or that was allotted to them during the daytime. So even in the evening, they were affording some time for them. So in the same way, after the pandemic, we can see how much time is required from the students in school time, and how much time, 1 period or 2 period or in the evening, can we give some time to them and use this technology to the benefit of the students.
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
Very well said.
very well. Absolutely. We all agree with you, sir. Thank you for that. Now I would request C.K. Palit sir. Sir, if I may present this one to you. This has come from Ms. Mehak Sajid Khan. She's a PGT with Shri Harshad Walia International School, Mumbai. The question says, what would be the impact of NEP on the socially backward classes? How long would it take to have them settle and enroll in education?
Yeah, very interesting question. In the NEP itself, there is a provision of social economical disadvantaged group, SEDG. So in the NEP, the SEDG category of the students, they are going to be taken care of their education by the major one, that is the 5 years, the basic learning. So we have found from the statistics that the children, those who join the schooling in the initial years, after some time, they drop out. So the dropout rates increase as we move from primary to middle and middle to secondary. So NEP is providing a better solution how to reduce the dropout and how to integrate this group of children, those who are generally they are in the rural areas or the remote areas, and they are not able to follow the proper way of learning. So the NEP, I think it will help this category of children to do it. as Jasvinder sir mentioned about one very, very appropriate thing, EduTel. If RailTel can happen, why not EduTel? So if the EduTel is a solution which the country is looking for this one, so all these school children, those who are in the SDG category or the you can say in the backward areas, like aspirational district, we know about the aspirational district. So NEP also mentions about the aspirational district. So in the aspirational district, there is a huge dropout of the students after a certain age. So how we are going to address it? So I believe that we have to get into this group of students into the mainstream of education, and that is a bigger challenge. That is a bigger challenge because many of our students, they are from these categories and they are staying in the rural areas. So I look forward to this one as an opportunity from the NEP to bring these children into the mainstream education, to continue with the education, and for them a solution is the vocational courses. If we can help these children to continue with the vocational courses which the NEP is going to offer, so I believe that they will find a livelihood for them in the future years, and they will be continuing with their education in a better way. Now, if you allow me one more thing, which Adarsh Sharma ji very nicely explained about the way of which we are going to use the digital learning in the classrooms or the technology. So I believe that if we have seen that yesterday's the proposal has been set up that the working hours can be 48 hours and the number of days for a person to work in the office will be for 4 days. So if this type of things also is going to happen in the country where the child is not required to come for 6 days, let the child come to the school for 4 days and another 2 days they stay at home and they continue with the online education. So that will give a lot of advantage to both the child and the teacher to integrate this digital learning in the school scenario. Thank you.
Right.
So just a moment, that is bad for health. A country has to understand you cannot say that I'll eat 3 days food in 1 day and then I will not do it, because understand, for teachers to deliver and for students to get that much, not advisable. In fact, other countries, what they have done is they are reducing the number of hours per day, but saying, okay, you can work an extra day. But anyway, this was my thought, Palit sir, because I run a company with 65 engineers, software developers. We give them Saturdays off so that when they come on Monday, they come with better ideas. So,
Yes.
I mean, this is my personal thing, because I don't know what this government is talking about. 48 hours in 4 days is sinful. Anyway, it is just my way of talking about. I'm sorry I came in, but it pinched me. I'm sorry.
No, I understand.
We all learn from you, sir. Right. So, before I go to, Dr. Kasturia, I have a question for Pratima ma'am. Pratima ji, as Jaswinder sir talked about, Palit sir also agreed with that. We don't have that EduTel. What scope you find for that direct cash, transfer in education? Many states are spending, let's say, 35,000 per year on, their government students in their government schools. So let's say 3,000 a month or 2,500 a month. So, what challenges you see in that direction if they directly transfer that amount to students or to those schools, private schools? Don't you think it would change the entire structure?
See, I really do not think that it would change the entire structure, very honestly, because I am an optimistic person by nature, but I also firmly believe that any idea is the most original and purest and nicest at its source of origin. It is when it meanders through the lanes of execution that it gets tainted, that it does not remain as pristine as it is at its point of conception, and it meanders into malpractices. So the moment you talk about something like this, I would say, where is a point by point monitoring mode? What are the checkpoints that you want to put in place in order to effect anything? So merely suggesting it, wonderful, awesome, it to change the scenario as such, but that is the way you conceptualize it. Now, in its implementation, how are you going to monitor it? It is going. Who are the stakeholders who will be involved in it? Let us know more about it. And then, is someone going to ensure at every point that the checks and measures are put into place? That is what I would like to first see a blueprint of, and then comment as to how the changes will be brought about.
Right. Okay, so that would linger on the discussion. So it was a thought. Thank you, Pratima ma'am, for responding, and I'll come back to you for your remarks. Now I would request Dr. Kasturia. Kasturia ji, in a lot of educator, a lot of participant, even today also talked about that vocational skills. How much challenges you find for schools to implement that part, to find experts to train their students, or what challenges you find?
As far as school teaching is concerned, I've not been a part of school teaching, but yes, when I was a student in school a couple of years back, we never had any kind of exposure to any kind of vocational skill sets. So what I believe is that, yes, like many of the speakers just mentioned, that vocational training would be a good, it would be a good option for those who, for various reasons, either economic or, social reasons, they are not able to pursue higher education. So that would give them the skill sets to get employment, which is very important. So vocational training is very, very important in a country like ours, where there is a lot of economic disparity. And the emphasis in schools so far, I mean, my mother was also a school teacher. I have, I come from a family where there are a lot of school teachers. We don't find that, in schools still, the emphasis on vocational training or the exposure to vocational training is so far not being given. So if that comes about, yes, it would be a lot of help.
It is mentioned in the NEP that schools have to offer those programs. So, but in fact, in the past, a lot of educators also shared that schools need to explore associations with, nearby ITIs or, diploma colleges or universities and colleges around them. So, thank you, Dr. Kusturia, for your remarks. I would request Jaswinder sir.
Thank you.
It's very difficult to find questions for Jaswinder sir. We need to find some difficult question for him. Jaswinder sir, it's
Is this my parak?
I'm sorry, sir. You think
Is this my parak or what?
you are among the people who designed the parak, sir?
No,
What would
no.
be the parak?
Okay, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Question is about the language. In fact, we have received more than 15 questions from the language part. One question says it would dilute the reputation of schools if they would start teaching in local language. Other question says it would dilute the English as a language. Like what are your observations? How do you see English as a language in coming time?
Okay. So before that, can I add something which was when Pratima ma'am first gave her answer to the first question?
You can do that.
Ma'am,
You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So ma'am, we did, this has got a lot of assessment also. Year before pandemic stuck, we did an assessment for around 20,000 students in 3 cities in India. And we found out that reading is not happening. So when you said that you would want your teachers to do this, that, I would say, please, please, please ask your teachers to make sure that students read a lot. Because in the coming years, these students will have to find their information on their own and they'll have to read a lot. So that habit of reading is something very, very important. Okay. So coming on to Rajulji, your question, the first one is, will the schools lose their shine or their importance if they say ABC English medium school or ABC school. You see, again, I'm telling you, the schools have a right to teach in English. Nobody forces them not to do that. But the ideal thing is that you may be an English medium school, but why not teach your math and science in local language? That is the only thing that we are asking for, or the government is asking for. What you do is where you have to actually form the foundations which need to be very strong. Let those be taught in this thing. You can teach history in English. You can teach geography in English. That's okay. And again, I'm saying kids can acquire multiple languages at a time. So that is not going to be a problem, right? So they can still be called as English medium schools because parents aspire to send their kids to English medium schools. They will spend extra money so that they don't face what, so that their students or their kids don't face what they've faced. So they will always want an English medium school where it could be said that it teaches in all the languages or the other languages also, right? That's one. Second is, will English lose its importance? No. Why not? Because again, we are a big world being contained into a small container. We need to interact with everybody in the world. So that is one language which is the language of the world. Not only that, our own country is connected through English as a language. Okay. And it is not about meri language, aapki language, uski language. It is about convenience.
Right.
Okay. When you need to do business, okay, it is not कि ये Britishers की language है, I will not. Vivekanand ji also spoke in English, right? Gandhiji did that. So it is not about whose language, it is about convenience and getting the work done. But you should not lose your roots because there's a lot of information, lot of knowledge in Indian local languages which have not been explored.
Right.
They have to be explored. So that is why I say both are important. I'll always say, अगर किसी की एक लाइन लंबी है आपसे, उसकी मत काटो, अपनी लंबी कर दो. तो इंग्लिश की इंपॉर्टेंस कम नहीं करनी, लोकल लैंग्वेज की इंपॉर्टेंस हैज टू बी इंक्रीज, व्हिच द ड्यू इंपॉर्टेंस हैज नॉट बीन गिवन टू देम. दैट शुड बी टेकन अप एंड वी will become a great country because we need this nationalism which will come through our mother tongue. And you know, we should be proud of so many languages. When the world says itni languages, oh my God, which is that, yes, your God, we have so many languages and we still survive, right? So that will become make us a stronger nation. That is required.
Right. Thank you, sir. I would request Soumya for the last question of the day. Before we conclude, Soumya, do we have your presence? Yeah. Soumya, how do you see the evolution of arts, as a field, post NEP implementation? Let's see, music in particular.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, that people can not only take it as a career but also as a passion. Quite the opposite. Not just as a passion but also as a career. And not everybody has to go out there and become musicians into, say, Bollywood, Hollywood, or whatever, release their own stuff. See, you see music daily, day-to-day stuff. Say, for example, the ringtone of the phone, the message notification that you get, that is designed by a musician in such a way that it just takes your attention but doesn't distract you. The music it is designed in such a way that it calms you down. The music that is in a mall, it is designed or it is thought in such a way that it peps you up and you take stuff while shopping. So with respect to music in general, it's not just about going out there and releasing albums or making into the mainstream stuff. Music has a lot of other stuff. There's sound engineering that you can do. So there are a lot of factors, or there are a lot of streams that people can explore. They get an opportunity, and if they get a push from school and their parents from an early age for them to go ahead and actually explore further in the field of music. So that's what I'd like to say.
Right. Thank you, Soumya. I thank you all the speakers for participating and making this 108th session truly special. Before we conclude, I would request all the speakers, if we can have your quick concluding remarks. We have also established one very interesting practice that while sharing your concluding remark, if you can also share or suggest, what would be your priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education, let's say for one day. So what would be your priority? What you would like to implement during that one day of ministership? So, I'll come to you randomly so that you cannot fix your answers. I'll request, Soumya, if we can begin with you, if I may ask you for your concluding remark. And what would be your priority if you become Minister of Education?
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It was indeed an honor and pleasure to, be a part of a panel with such esteemed people, and I could share my views in front of everyone. Now, answering the question, I think if I become the minister for a day, I would focus not more on examinations, but the journey of actually learning that particular stuff and taking experience out of it, rather than focusing that you need to study this because you need to pass an exam. That's what I would do if I would become, if I could.
Right, right. But government is increasing more number, like it's giving more number of board exams. So you will change the policy, right? Thank you, Soumya. For that, I would request Jaswinder sir if we can have your concluding remark and what would be your priority if you become a minister for a day.
Okay, concluding remark is something which is already a little bit shared by earlier speaker, is that this policy is a huge policy. It's a lot of change. Let's take it piece by piece. Let's finish one part, achieve the milestone, then go on to the other, and not bother about when the entire thing would be implemented. Whatever we implement, we need to implement properly and then go to the next step. Because rightly said, if we miss out something in between and then after 10 years we come to know, oh, this is the mistake we made, it will have the same thing what happened to ECC, right? CCE, sorry, right? So that's something that we need to understand, is that this policy is a great policy designed by educationists, designed by scientists, designed by people who have done a lot of good to our country. Okay, it is from the space. Chief of ISRO, he was heading the team. So what we need to do is we need to go piece by piece and definitely get on to the end, and this will solve the puzzle. That is one. So that is how I would be. That would be my concluding remark. Now coming on to what would I do? I had such fortunate panelists before me. They started with that. So Pratima ma'am, I've always talked about that teachers are the people who are going to implement this policy. Okay, whatever technology you bring in, whatever infrastructure you may get in, whatever policy you may get in, whatever money you may pump in, till the time our teachers do not do their work properly, this is not going to happen. And so we need to take care of our teachers. Okay, a lot of things have been said about teachers, but what I say is, look what they did during the pandemic. Imagine they didn't get their full salaries, but they gave their 150%, not 100%. So we need to classify them as the first class citizens of the country. We need to respect them. And when you respect somebody, they will not do wrong. Believe me, there's somebody who told me, when you go in for a meeting and if you're signing a document, if you ask the person, is there something that I as a gentleman have, depended on you that I need to know? If you tell somebody that I call you a gentleman, that person will never do wrong. So if you give that respect, the teachers will give their 100%, 110%, 150%. So we need to give them that value, and that value will change the way things are. And this will also get people to join teaching profession as a choice, not as being forced. When will passion come in? You need passion for teaching, nothing else. You need passion for teaching. If you need to have passion, you need to love doing that, and that will happen only if people come by choice. That is an important thing. Now, having said that, I am on a mission. Pratima ma'am, Soumya ma'am, we've got Principal Palit sir, Ved sir, Adesh sir. I am on a mission to get the teachers the required respect. I'm not going to wait for the government to do it. So I'm going to share a document. Allow me a minute. So I'm sharing this document. See, what we are trying to say is, okay, we have got engineers who write ER as a prefix before their name. Doctors have a DR before them. Chartered accountants have a CA written with them. Why can't we have a ED written before our name? What I'm saying is, let us start writing ED. Let the world know that so-and-so person is an educationist. I am an educationist. My team is an educationist, and expect the world out of us. So I have taken the liberty of just putting it this way for you to feel how would it be if you had an ED written in front of you. So what I truly would want each one of us to actually get into this level is, can we do this? Why can't we do it? Let us start by one step. Everybody just putting it up in front of your name and letting your own teachers, because you're all principals, You are head of institutions. Let it be known that each teacher has an identity, and that identity the world has to acknowledge. And if that is done, I'm sure the spirit will come in. And if the spirits are right, anything can be done. So I would want to conclude here. Thank you so much, Rajulji, for giving this opportunity to me and to this mission of mine or our company. How do we bring in more and more love, affection, and respect for our gurus? They are actually our gurus.
Thank you, Jaswinder sir. And we can see in the chat box a lot of people have already started
Yeah, yes,
taking participation in your mission. Thank you for that. I would request Dr. Kasturia, Neha ji, if we can have your concluding remark, and what would be your priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education?
So I would like to thank you and this platform, first of all, for allowing me to speak here today and for listening to all these great educationists. And my concluding remark would be that the national education policy should focus on application-based learning. And if I get a chance to be the minister, what I would like to, somehow ensure is that there should be a mechanism in which we can, there has to be some sort of competition within the teaching profession, so that those who are really interested in teaching, they stay, and those who have just come here as the last option, they should not be so. So, if there is some way of the teachers as well, then we would ensure that, the education system is good. And then I don't think we need policies to, we don't need, these policies to come up as often in that case. So the idea is that some way in which the teachers who are assessing the students should also be assessed. And like, sir and mentioned that there has to be respect for the teachers, the teaching. I'm teaching in a college, in a university, where, in most of the private colleges now, the emphasis is shifting on more and more of research. And yes, that is very, very important. But what is also important is that the people who are teaching, they also should get their credit. They should also get the due.
Right.
So that's my idea,
Thank you.
That's
So
what I would do if I become the minister. Thank you so much.
So you create an environment where people who are genuinely interested in teaching, they would stay. And so I just apprehend that we would have 90% of vacancies. So how we are going to fill those vacancies if that kind of thing happens? Thank you, Dr. Kasturia, for that. Now I would request, Ved sir. So I'll come to you, Ved sir. Your concluding remark, and what would be your priority, sir, if you get a chance to become Minister of Education for one day?
Sir, since the time you put these questions to all, I was thinking what I can do, but my priority is random. If I connect to my own priorities, since many years I'm trying to have it, that we have almost I don't know how many schools across the country. But one thing where I find that if I become education minister, definitely I would love to release the salaries of all teachers and principals from one center, maybe from the central government side or from other side. Because what happens, we talk a lot about the teachers, we respect a lot about for the teachers, we have a great feelings for the teachers, but ultimately when we come into the practical approach, we miss out. We miss out in the execution part. So if I become education minister, so irrespective of the government teachers, private teachers or non-private teachers, wherever, if they are teachers, they should get their salaries from one central place. That would be my first priority. Maybe I'll be collecting funds from the management side. They have to deposit fund in a collective place, maybe in a United Bank. I would not say that which bank and where to have it. So this is one thing I may be, and that may not go to have a education minister like me. But yes, another thing, my concluding remark for this NEP, as every my respective fellow mates have already said a lot about it. My only remark is this, that yes, anything which comes first, we become more panic, need not to become panic. It's very simple policy. It's a very conducive policy, I would say. That being a teacher, I feel I'm a teacher, so I'll definitely request everyone, wait and watch. Do not become panic that something is coming where you are going to get lots of like interfere. It is simple, sweet, and very compact. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So, after reading your suggestion, I believe that you are more interested in finance ministry, rather than education ministry. So, thank you, Ved sir. You would need an additional charge of finance. You would be perhaps the first education minister who has the additional charge of finance ministry to implement that. Thank you, sir, for sharing that. Now, I would request Palit sir, if I may ask you for your concluding remark, and what would be your priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education? Sir, you are on mute.
Yeah. First of all, I think we all will cast our vote for Ved Misra sir to become the Education and the Finance Minister of the country. So Ved Misra sir, we would like to see you contesting in some of the coming elections, and we are there with you. And we are looking forward that whatever you desire, whatever you dream for the teachers, it gets fulfilled. Now, for today's session, it was a wonderful session for me. We have discussed a lot of points on the NEP, and thank you, Jaswinder Singh ji, for giving a title to the teachers ED. So you have already started a good campaign for giving a title signature to the teachers, and I'm sure that we all will be carrying it forward, your mission to add ED in front of our name. Now, if we look into these NEPs, the NEP is going to come with a lot of opportunities for everyone. And if I am the Minister of Education, so my major contributions or my major focus will be that for capacity building of all stakeholders. So how we build the capacity for a student, for a teacher, for the school management, for everyone to contribute properly for the growth of the society and for the learning processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Palit sir, for that. And before I go to Pratibha ma'am, I would request Adesh sir, if we can have your concluding remark, and then I'll go to Pratibha ma'am. Adesh sir,
Well, thank you.
Your
Thank you,
concluding
sir.
remark, and what would be your priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education?
Well, thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to thank Jaswinder sir, and I hope he is hearing me. And I would like to tell him that I was really glad to hear that when he said that those two letters must be put before the name of every educator or teacher. And I assure him that tomorrow morning, that is the first thing that I'm going to talk to my teachers. And apart from it, as an education minister, I'm really, I always feel excited whenever I hear the name Nalanda and Takshila. So I would like to have that sort of centers of excellence in every state, in fact, every district of my country. So where people can go and really work out to get that excellence in every field that they want. And apart from that, there should be some practices for the students and as well as the teachers, like meditation, yoga, that brings the inner peace for a human being, apart from this excellence in the subject. That's what I would like to work for. Thank you. That's all.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now I would request you, Pratibha ma'am, thank you, Pratibha ma'am, for being with us. You were the first participant who joined, with the session, and for last 3 hours, you have been, patiently listening to all the thoughts. So you are the best person to conclude the session. So, with your thoughts, with your ideas, we would like to conclude the session. And